Hi everybody and welcome to my Flamingo coloured pencil tutorial. For this particular drawing I use the polychromos pencils, which I use for the majority of my coloured pencil drawings, as I think they are the perfect fit, particularly for animal drawings, as they really help with that realistic finish. Before I began this drawing, I printed out an outline that I created. This is included in the playbacks over on my website, so take a look at that if you're wanting to draw in real time with me. To begin with, I drew the eye, which was actually really easy. I think birds in general, the eyes are really easy to draw, which is really nice, as this normally holds the essence of each drawing. So yeah, this was really simple to do, and I then moved on to the beak, as this kind of fits in with a similar texture, as in you've got that smooth area to replicate in comparison to the rest of the drawing, which is feathers. So I used a lot of small circular motions to recreate this smooth finish. As you can see, I also mapped in the dark areas. I used the dark sepia and a light pressure to do this initially, and I then went in straight in with the black to darken these up, as these were really dark in the reference photo, so I wanted to make sure I captured that early on. And because we now have the dark in, it means you can match up the lighter sections of the beak to this, so you can darken up as appropriate, whilst also bearing in mind you've got them really dark areas that you can match it up to. So I used some blue undertones towards the bottom of the beak, and then the further up I went, I used more of the Venetian red, cinnamon and burnt ochre. These colours you'll find I used for pretty much the rest of the drawing in terms of all the feathers. But yeah, there was some of this included in the beak as well, probably due to the shadows that the feathers created on the beak. So everything is nice and cohesive in terms of colour, which can definitely be overlooked sometimes. I think it's easy to assume that the beak would have a lot of grey in there, which it does, but you do have some of them shadows that match up to the feathers that surround it. So once I was happy with the blending and all of the shadows that I'd put into the beak, I moved on to finishing the rest of the face. For my base layers, I used warm grey 1 and cinnamon. Cinnamon was a really good pencil that I used for this particular drawing. It's a very light baby pink, so even for the really deep dark pink orangey areas, cinnamon really helped with that initial base layer, which you always want to keep light anyway, as it helps with the general blending process as you come back and work over the top of the layers later on. There was also a lot of orange included in this piece, which I used the burnt ochre to replicate. I think again it's easy to assume that there's a lot of pink going on within this flamingo piece, because when you think of a flamingo you do automatically think of pink. But there was a lot more orange than even I anticipated, so that was used a lot. Like you can see in the face, I put it over the cinnamon, and it's a really good way to blend the pink and orange, but you do have the majority of the orange still striking through, as it is significantly darker than the cinnamon pencil. So yeah, something to bear in mind for this realistic finish. And once I'd got these base layers down, I then focused on getting the shadows in the right places. I used a variety of different colours to do this. I go more in depth for the real-time tutorial. There are so many different colours that I used to really bring this to life and have that rich dark undertone that still blends very nicely into the pinks and oranges within the lighter sections. So similarly to the beak, I focused on darkening up the darker sections within the face, and then you can go into the lighter areas and start to match this up, and you can use a variety of different colours to blend everything together, get all of that right, and then you've got the shadow to match up to. So I used a lot of the burnt ochre for this particular section. I think this gave a really lovely finish. This is one of my favourite areas of the piece, just because the orange pokes through so nicely. I also used some Venetian reds, which I would say is a lot darker than the cinnamon, but it still is that nice pink colour. So it helps with the layering process that we've done the cinnamon, and then you go in with the Venetian red over the top of that to darken, rather than going straight in with the dark. It helps give a smooth and realistic finish with all of them colours blending. So once I was finished with the face, moved on to the neck area. So I think it's really important to work section at a time for a drawing like this. You can, if you want to, do the whole thing, but I personally find it far less overwhelming if I break things down into sections. For example, so far I did the eye, then the beak, the face, and now the neck. And then with the body, this was the biggest part of the drawing. I split this up as well into multiple sections. This just makes it far less overwhelming. But I'm not really doing much different in terms of the colours and techniques used. So you've got that grey and cinnamon base layer. You can go in with the burnt ochre on top of that, and then focusing on the shadows with the dark red, walnut browns, things like that. All of them rich dark colours. And then you can darken up the really dark sections as same as before, and then focus on the areas surrounding that and gradually getting lighter where needed. There was also a lot of dark cadmium orange that I used throughout the neck, which is a really bright, vibrant orange that I don't very often get to use for animal drawings, just because it is so pigmented and it usually leaves a very unrealistic finish. I can't think of any other animal where I've needed to use a colour so bright. So this was really exciting. The flamingo had so many different bright, vibrant colours that I could use, so it was really nice to be able to give these different colours a try, which is why I think this drawing is so exciting for coloured pencil artists. So you may notice, especially in the reference photo, as you get further down the neck, there are a couple more areas that are lighter. So I really wanted to create that natural blend between the light and dark, and I found the Venetian red and burnt ochre were really good for this, as well as the nougat. All of these colours are very individual and bright and stand well on their own, but they also blend very well as they are that little bit more muted in comparison to colours like the dark cadmium orange. So this was a really good way, using these three colours, to create that natural blend and getting lighter as you go into the areas that were lighter within the reference photo. If you're enjoying this tutorial so far, make sure to check out all of the links down below. You can find more information about my Patreon, which is a membership that you can pay £10 a month to access all of my real-time tutorials like this, coloured pencils and also watercolour courses. You can also find links to all of my social media pages if you're wanting to see a little bit more about behind the scenes here at ME Nature Creations. And there are also links to things like my website, where you can individually purchase this course in particular, which I will link down below, and a variety of other real-time coloured pencil tutorials as well as watercolour classes. All of my artwork is nature-based, which is something that I really wanted to focus on, as I love being outdoors, so being able to create anything nature-themed art is very exciting for me, and your support means that I can continue to do that. So yeah, check out all of the links in the description for more, and let's get back to this flamingo tutorial. So as you can see within the body, I have definitely focused section at a time. If you take a look at the reference photo, this area that I'm currently working on is that dark shadow that is created from the neck and face area. So I wanted to focus on this individually, as is that deep dark shadow that we can get in and then work into the lighter areas within the next section. So this dark area again involved all of the same colours, so you've got the browns, the dark reds, anything like that to get the richness and darken as appropriately. And then as we go into the lighter areas, I wanted to map in the kind of bumps within the feathers, like it's not as smooth flowing in comparison to the face and the neck. So I used the initial base layers with the warm grey one and the cinnamon, and then I went in with some darker colours such as the burnt ochre, which isn't too dark, so it wasn't going to darken up and make it look really patchy. It still all flows very nice. So with a light pressure with pencils, like I say, the burnt ochre, then went in and mapped in the almost triangular shapes and the direction that the feathers were moving. And then once you've got section at a time these areas mapped in, you can, same as before, darken up or lighten as appropriately. Towards the top of the body, you don't really need that much darkening going on, so a lot of blending was done with the cinnamon and the warm grey one. And then the further down, everything gets very dark, so going in with the same rich colours that we did before. Now, I would definitely say the most important part of this flamingo body is making sure the feathers are pointing in the right direction. So you might want to print out the reference photo and maybe put a couple of arrows down to remind yourself the direction everything is moving. As the feathers do overlap, they do move in different directions within each section, so it is important to be able to identify the direction that everything is moving. And then once you've got that flow, you'll realise that it is actually quite natural, and you can manipulate everything to move in that flow and not have to go from horizontal to vertical very dramatically, like it does transition very nicely. So for example, on the top of the flamingo, everything moves towards the right and has a natural curve to it, and then the more right it does go, it curves a bit further down. That's for the top of the flamingo. And then when you come more towards the bottom, away from the bottom of the neck on the left, everything follows the way the neck is moving and just slightly comes up a little bit more to the right. And then the further right you do get, it does point up significantly more, and you have a nice overlap in the middle of the body where the feathers that move up overlap the feathers that are beneath it that curve down further on the right. This can be very difficult to wrap your head around if you've never drawn feathers before, which is what I really wanted to focus on. So if you look at the real-time tutorial linked below, you'll be able to really see me go in depth on the movement and the way all of these feathers do flow and how natural and easy it is to replicate when it is explained a little bit more. So for example, if you take a look at the section that I've just been working on, the really dark brown area curves more towards the bottom. That's the general direction everything moves, the feathers in that area where it gets very dark. And as you come a little bit further up on the right hand side still, you've got them light grey feathers that point upwards. So looking in between the two of them, there is a natural transition. It's not, like I say, very obvious that they change direction very suddenly. And all I've done is create a natural curvature with the coloured pencils, and it does require a little bit of patience to be able to do this, and a lot of layering and changing the movement and keeping it consistent the whole time. But if you can do that, that you can't go wrong with this flamingo drawing. It does just require that little bit of patience. So for the last couple of sections that you can see me working on, I used really light layers again as it gets lighter towards the top. So the cinnamon, warm grey one, and then in with the burnt ochre, I mapped in all of them really triangular sections, which I think is very prominent around here. So yeah, got them down, and then further towards the bottom you've got the rich tones that you can then map in again. Same as before, keeping everything consistent in terms of colour. The only reason that we are splitting things up is so that we don't feel overwhelmed, so everything naturally flows together when we've added the layers down towards the end. And there's a lot of walnut brown towards the bottom here, as we really want to keep everything very dark, like it is in the reference photo. This is probably the darkest section, usually requires a little bit more patience and layering. So yeah, just to be conscious of that, a lot more patience needed in the darker areas. So that is essentially it for this coloured pencil tutorial. I have thoroughly enjoyed creating this piece. as I haven't used coloured pencils in a while now, so I would love to know what you think to this drawing and if you want to see more coloured pencil work. As I have mentioned previously, you can find more information regarding this tutorial down in the description. This real-time tutorial is 5 hours long and it is my most detailed coloured pencil course yet. So if you're wanting to learn how to create feathers, how to work on layers, and just to get that hyper-realistic finish, make sure you check that out. And if you are wanting to see more nature-themed artwork, please make sure to like and subscribe. All of your support means so much to me, and like I've mentioned before, it means I can carry on creating artwork that I love and reaching out to you guys, meeting new people, artists that want to learn and enjoy my work. It's been amazing and I'm super grateful for that. So yeah, please make sure to do that, and I will see you for the next video. Bye guys!